Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Bulletproof Selling. My name is Sean Rhodes. I'm the Chief Sales Architect and author of Bulletproof Selling, a guide for systemizing sales on the battlefield of business. Now, here on this show and this podcast, we believe that hope is not a sales strategy. So we are here to increase the performance of salespeople and the results of their teams. We get to have a lot of great folks on this show, insights from the top minds in sales. These are best-selling authors, trainers, and those that are actually out there in the field building businesses and managing sales teams. Now, our commitment out of every one of these shows and podcasts is that I will build a system with our guests that you can use no matter the size of your goals or the size of your team. So I'm really excited today to be welcoming Mr. Matt Tolbert to the show. Matt, hop on, sir. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. I got a small correction. I wish my name was pronounced that cool with the Colbert, Tolbert, but I'm Tolbert. Yep, that's okay. No problem.
All right. Tolbert.
Strong
All right, man.
E
Well,
T at the end.
It is. Yeah, and I'm really excited to have Matt here with us because he's actually in charge of selling something that often people just don't know what it is. And he's got, not only for himself, but he's got to train his sales team to be able to educate and communicate at the same time. So, Matt, tell us a little bit about you, your company, your team, and what it is that you guys sell.
For sure, yeah. Well, first things first, thanks, Sean, for having me, and thank you for your service as well. Just off the bat, really appreciate it. I have a lot of friends and family that have served, and it's a lot of respect for you. So thank you for that, and thanks for having me on. So, yeah, I mean, a little bit about me. My path through sales has been an interesting one, and into sales. I actually went to school for voice performance and arts management. So, my path through school itself was a little bit of a winding one. I took some time off. My dad and my grandpa both had cancer, so I took about 2 years off in college, and that really set myself up for a stronger mentality. Honestly, those 2 years were crucial for me. I was really proud to have broken that trend of, I think the statistics, like 90% of people that stop going to school never finish. So, being in the top 10% right there was pretty powerful for me. But honestly, looking back, I attribute a lot of my sales success to my music degree. As ironic as that may be, there's a lot of skills associated with being in the music world, especially voice performance. And my wife's a dancer, so her work ethic's incredible. But that's just a quick note to hiring managers. If there's music majors or student athletes that perform at a high level, these folks have incredible. They have the intangibles. They are able to take criticism. They're able to handle rejection. They're able to take direction, work with a team. All that really kind of tough stuff that's basic for a salesman. They kind of just get beat up with it in school, kind of different than a lot of other majors. So just a side note there. But yeah, I had a great sales career in the travel industry. I won some awards. I always joke that my first, my best sale was convincing this lovely woman to be my wife. My second best sale was convincing her that a sales award I won with Colette Vacations was a 23-day cruise to Antarctica. So my second best sale was convincing her that Antarctica was a good honeymoon destination. It's like a little bit different.
Fair.
So, path through the travel industry was great, but I was always driven to mentorship, and I had this pull towards leadership. I loved sales. I was pretty darn good at it. I still am. I'm still actively selling, but I just loved that ability to help people grow and help serve others. So my mother was a nurse for damn near 40 years, and I think I got that from her. The ability to serve and want to help people around you. I know sales leadership is not as noble of a career as nursing, but I still go into it with that mentality, right? I go into it thinking, how can I make my sales team better? Not just at selling, but just enjoy their job more, enjoy life.
Let's talk about what your sales team does, because this is something that I thought just, it blew my mind. Most people know, like if I'm selling widgets, people have heard of widgets. You're selling something, and people, like, it's so cutting edge that I know you have to educate your prospects on what it is, what it can do for them. And, they don't even know it exists before you or your salespeople reach out. So what industry are you in, man?
Yeah. So we do, it's very unique. I'm going to throw the word Bitcoin out there, and people are going to think so many different things, like, oh my God, Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But we do an even more unique aspect of it. We help retailers, we help ATM operators, we help point of sale providers to be able to responsibly sell Bitcoin for cash. And there's a few kind of keywords in what I just said. that, again, like you said, most people aren't educated on Bitcoin itself. And then the ability to be able to sell it over the counter or sell it at a retail space, that's a whole nother conversation. But the two
Yeah.
keywords in what I said were for cash and responsibly. So the cash side of it, there's about 20 to 30% of the US that's underbanked or unbanked. So we've got 330 million people in the US. That's about 70 million folks that don't have good access to banking. And these folks are flocking towards Bitcoin as a solution. They're finding that Bitcoin helps them send money to and from family and friends overseas. They can take that $1,000 they made in cash that week and get it out of cash and put it somewhere they can use it online. So they're buying things online with it. That's a big use case. And also just saving, speculating, things like that. So there's this massive population of people that are really flocking to Bitcoin as a solution because they don't have a good one in their area. The other aspect of what I said was responsibly, and that's like the craziest part of this industry. We're still very much in the Wild West in our industry. We've been around for
not a lot of regulations yet.
No, I mean there are some, but it's such a gray area that you can say there's a lot of companies out there saying, yeah, I'm doing my compliance, we're doing fine, and they're really not. And that's the scary part. And we work with a lot of our end vendors tend to be convenience stores, gas stations, liquor stores, check cashing stores, things like that. And these folks, they want a new revenue stream. They want the ability to offer this. They've got people asking about it. But again, think back to the Wild West. There were snake oil salesmen in the Wild West, right? And then there was the town doctor that was trying to give real solutions and keep people safe and healthy. That's kind of where we stand. But there are still some of the competition out there still doing that snake oil kind of, it's not to disparage anybody, but it's a unique and young environment. And that gives my team a lot of challenges because we have to take the high road. It's a self-imposed responsibility to be a better provider of cash to crypto. And so we're selling on this high road, and there's still quite a few folks that are living and loving that low road. And so since we base all of our partnerships on a revenue share, and we have a really healthy revenue share, people can make a lot of money. But some of our competition, they're making quite a bit of money on the back of drug trafficking, human trafficking, money laundering, scams. All the check scam. Like my grandmother years ago was caught in a scam with somebody that called her and got her to cash a check for $10,000, and she was going to send them the money. And well, people are now using Bitcoin to do that to the elderly as well. And so it's a really unique space. And we take a lot of pride in the fact that we don't allow that sort of activity. We have so many checks and balances in our system to prevent it. But like you said, from a sales perspective, it's a tough thing to unpack, just cash to crypto, but then to convince someone that you need a healthy and responsible partner. And we often liken it to, a convenience store wouldn't bring in a food vendor that poisons their customers. They wouldn't serve gas that breaks people's cars down. Now, luckily, those are regulated industries, right? We've had to, I mean, the reason they're regulated is I'm sure there used to be gas that ruined people's cars. And I'm sure there used to be food that made people sick. So we're in that same position right now where, we're in it for the long haul. And our sales team has to fight that kind of uphill battle, but they're great at it. They're really good at it. And we find a lot of good partners that are starting to read about it. They're starting to understand we need to pick someone that's going to keep my people safe. Not only because they want to keep their people safe, but a lot of these businesses that we're partnering with, they're pivotal in their neighborhoods. They've been around for 10 to 20 years. They are a staple. People know them by name. A lot of these convenience stores, gas stations. And if they start being associated with illicit activity, or if they start having
they're done. Yeah.
They're done. Yeah. I mean, they can lose a customer for life just because the little old lady down the street got scammed. We hear stories of, people losing $90,000, $100,000 in a month because they got convinced to send money, to somebody through Bitcoin and through an ATM. So that's kind of the unique aspect of our business. But
yet you still have the sales cycle, like a lot of I mean, pretty much every industry
Absolutely.
does, right? Yours might be a little longer, more heavily based on education in the beginning.
Yeah.
But a question that I know you probably have been thinking on an answer to is, where do you see salespeople relying a little too much on hope? And it could be your team,
Absolutely.
could be the people in your industry. Where
Yeah.
do you hope entering the picture a little more than it should?
Yeah, and I mean, I've thought a lot about this. I've been watching a lot of your podcasts, I've read your book,
Yeah.
and it's kind of top of mind quite a bit. And I've thought back through my career in 4 different industries that I was in: pharma, travel, food service, and now
Hmm.
FinCEN. But I think consistently people rely on hope too much for follow up. I mean, that to me,
Mm.
every sales rep I've ever known, and looking back at the best sales reps I've known at various companies, every one of the best reps has a fantastic follow-up system. They have a way to make
Hmm.
sure that things aren't slipping through the cracks. Um, and that happens
Yeah.
in this industry as well. We only have 3 sales reps covering the entire United States, and myself, so 4. Although I will say
Nice.
our president and
Keeps
our
y'all
COO,
busy.
they hop on calls as well. Yeah, so we're all
Yeah.
busy. But with that comes, a massive book of business for each of my reps. A massive book of leads, and I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure you've heard of, not just at this company now, but my previous companies, where you're looking through your CRM and you're seeing
Hmm.
a note on a Monday that says, Mike's out of town. Mike's the decision maker. Mike's out of town. Wants you to call him next Tuesday. He'll be in the office at 8 a.m. And then you look at that next step and there's nothing there. And it's been 2 months and you never called him back because you forgot, or somebody forgot because they
Right.
didn't give themselves a follow up. They didn't systemize it. They thought, oh, Mike's not in, I'll call him next Tuesday. And then as it happens to be, we lose track.
Right. The dog got
So
sick, kid needed to go to the dog, whatever, right? Life happened.
yeah, I mean, or
Yeah.
you just think, I mean, I think a lot of people, we just think we're better at following through with things we want to do. Even little thing,
Hmm.
like we have 2 cats and I've shut the door because they would be all over my desk if I didn't. But
Right.
things like cleaning the litter box. My wife
Yeah.
and I have systemized that in our house. We have an alarm set with Alexa, and she says,
Hmm.
every 3 days, litter box needs to be cleaned, Matt. And we have the names
Yeah.
on theirs too, so my wife and I don't
Oh,
forget
nice.
whose turn it is. Um,
That's
but yeah, so
clever. I
it's
like that.
even something that simple that you have to
Yeah.
do to keep your cat healthy. Like, it's good to set an automated system for it. So why don't
Yeah.
we do that in sales? And there's a lot of sales reps that don't. They rely on, I hope I remember. I hope they call
Hmm.
me back. I sent that email, and it becomes this, again, it sounds so simple, but it's one of those weird oxymorons it's simple to do, but hard to do. It's a simple, hard
Mm.
task. Follow up. I mean, in my opinion, for people to get it right consistently, it's very difficult if you don't have a good
And what we
system.
find is, we survey sales teams, that there's 2 reasons that this doesn't happen. So I'd love to get your thoughts. Maybe you can come up with a third and change the industry. But the first reason that we hear that people don't consistently follow up is that they don't have the time. Which you think would be weird, right? Like, your job is to follow up, build relationships, provide value, and hopefully gain a new customer. But these
Yeah.
folks say, Sean, if I set a follow up on everybody that I talk to, man, I'd be too busy. Or I'm already busy, managing
Mm,
customer relationships, and I'm in charge for part of the delivery of what I sell. So I'm busy actually handling people that have paid
sure.
us. I don't have the time to follow up with all the prospects. So that's reason one. And I know you and I can really hack through probably why that's
Yeah.
not true when you really look at it.
Yeah.
Or the other side of it is, I don't know how. Now, you can
Yeah.
solve either problem, but the I don't know how bit usually comes down to, like you said, I think I'm a good person. Like, I think I have integrity. When I tell my family I'm going to do something, or I need to pick my kids up at 2:30, they're not sitting there wondering where mom or dad is, right? Like, I'm in the car line picking them up.
Yeah.
So I'm a good person. But yet on the sales side, I haven't figured out, like, how do I consistently set follow-up steps? Or I know I have a CRM, but my boss only really requires me to enter, that I made a call in it. So
Sure.
that's all I do. Like, that's all I'm
Yeah.
using it for.
Got to
So
get my 20 for the
which
day,
side
and then
of,
I'm done.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
and then I'm done. Like, and if you open
Yeah.
the notes up, well, you made a call, but I don't know who you talked to. I don't know what their budget is. I don't know when they're buying. I don't know who they bought from in the past. Like, there's just no data in there, right? I entered the
Or
note,
everyone's
that's it.
favorite,
So,
everyone's favorite note, LVM, left voicemail. Like,
oh
okay.
yeah, of course, yeah. But what voicemail did you leave? What did it say?
Yep.
What's your next
That
step?
counts.
Okay, yeah, like none of it's there.
Yeah.
That counts, yeah. So,
Yep.
which of those two do you feel like most of the salespeople really suffer from? That I don't have the time, or that I haven't really learned how?
I don't buy that I don't have the time. I really don't. I mean, I get that people say that they don't have the time, but I think they don't have the time because they haven't systemized it.
Okay.
It's our job to do that, right? And if, in my opinion, there may be some leads that we're not sure about, so maybe we don't have time for stuff that we don't know. But if you've got warm leads, if you've got inbound leads, or if you've got opportunities, if you think they're worth your time to be doing the follow-up, then you make the time, and that's your job.
Right.
Like, prioritize
Yeah.
those deals. So I'm not a huge fan of that excuse. Now, I don't know how. I wouldn't say it's that I don't know how to follow up. It's I don't know how to make myself follow up, or I don't know how to take the pressure off of them to follow up with me. I think it was chapter 7 in your book, eliminating prospect attrition. You worded it really well. But I mean, that to me is like number one for my team. Like, how do we make it so that we're not putting follow up on somebody else to remember to reach out to us? And I think everyone does it. And some of the tools that I use personally, and some of the tools that I try to coach my team on, is batching time and blocking time off in your calendar, and letting that time be an immovable object, letting yourself be hyper focused. I think far too often we are so hyper connected to email and phone that we let ourselves mentally get pulled out of our tasks for the day. You hear that ding on your phone, and you see that little red number on your email
that's where my
bar,
attention goes. Like,
I gotta get it. That's a meaningful task. And it really pulls that mental bandwidth away from what we're supposed to be doing. So for me, I like when people put in their calendar an hour follow-up emails, and then the next hour prospecting, phone calls, the next hour, different blocks in your calendar of what you're going to be doing. You're holding yourself accountable, but B, if you're good at it, you don't let yourself do follow-up emails outside of that time. Give yourself a beginning and end of day follow-up email. Yeah, batch it. I mean, the email batching, there's a whole study on it and all that stuff. But I think that's really powerful. It helps hold yourself accountable. But yeah, I mean, really, the follow-up comes down to systems. Are you using your CRM?
Let's talk about building a system for that. Then this sounds like something that a lot of people would get value from. And so the process that I've written about in Bulletproof Selling, and the process that we teach, is all about batching as well, right? Batching by type of outreach task. Now, to preface this, like you may be saying, Sean, that sounds great, make phone calls, but how do I know like which phone calls to make? Or I'm looking at 50 prospects. They're all in different stages of a sales cycle. Some of them need emails. Some of them would be better served by a LinkedIn message. Some of them I really do need to pick up the phone on. So first, let's start by getting down to, if you're doing this inside of a CRM, most CRMs, I haven't found one that couldn't do this yet. Most CRMs, you can define the type of task, almost like put a tag in front of it, where it's, this is a phone call task, or this is an email task. And that way, when you look at your dashboard, you can then sort. I only want to see my phone call tasks, and only the ones that are due today are the ones that are overdue. Absolutely. And that way, it allows you during that 9 o'clock batching, phone call hour, to be able to see here just the phone calls. And I don't know about you, Matt, but unless I'm really backed up, I can get through those phone calls in less than an hour. If all I'm doing is just banging, smiling and dialing, right? Because I get in a rhythm like we all do. And then if it's the email time, I'm ready to roll, especially if I have templates. Oh, wow. And that's a whole chapter in that book as well. So let's talk about how you advise people to systemize this type of batched follow-up using their calendars, using their CRM. So as you well know, because you've gotten through the book, we talk about trimming hope from a sales strategy. We use the acronym TRIM, T-R-I-M. So the first is a trigger. Now, do you advise that salespeople trigger their follow-up system before they reach out to a prospect, like before they even, start researching? Should it happen very early in the sales cycle? Is this something that needs to happen every day? Should it happen after a proposal or a quote is out to really be effective? We could start anywhere. There's no wrong answer, but where would you say a salesperson really needs to start with their trigger for their follow-up batching tasks?
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole nother thing when you're doing prospecting and fresh prospecting. But I think for me, the follow-up for prospects you've already identified, let's focus on that, right?
Okay. All right.
So you've made a phone call, you've sent an email. That's a trigger. You're done with that task. What's your next step? So to me, if you're thinking about it like that, you're going to have 20 or 30 triggers a day. You're going to have 20 or 30 times that you need to remind yourself to set a next step. Because I mean, literally, I think the death of all salesmen comes with, you forgot to set a follow-up. You call somebody a month
Yep.
later because you forgot, and they say, "Oh, I'm already working with so and so," and
Yeah. Sorry.
you're like,
Yeah.
"Why did I forget? How did I forget? I'm good at this,"
Yes.
And it's like
Yeah.
it's easy. Again, it's that hard, easy thing. But if you've got the system in place and you remember that trigger, you've sent an email, go to your CRM, set yourself a reasonable next step, an actionable next step. And I think where a lot of stuff gets lost is that email is, "Hey, are you available next week?" Or, "Hey, I've got a little bit of information for you. Let me know if this is interesting to you." And we're putting the follow up on the prospect. We're putting the follow up on the
Right.
opportunity to reach back out to us. And in our minds, there's this little weird thing that happens where we think, "I've done what I'm supposed to do. They'll get back to me." And even in
Right.
those
Which
cases,
is giving them the ball, right?
yeah, even in those cases, we have to set a next step for ourselves, and we have to think, if they don't get back to me, what
Mhm.
would my reasonable next step be? So maybe our
Right.
cadence is a little longer. Maybe we give them a week, maybe we give them 2 weeks. But we need to have an actionable next step. So we put the onus on them to reach back out to us, but we've also given ourselves a backup that says, 2 weeks from today, I'm going to check back in. You know what I mean? It sounds
Mhm.
so stupidly simple. It really does. But
But yet it's
it's
actually
the difference between a great rep and a
something,
and
right?
a
So
bad
that's
rep.
that's the second piece
Yeah.
of this acronym is making it repeatable, right?
Yep.
So this to your point, how do I make sure if I reach out to 30 people a day, I might not have 30 conversations, but I'm reaching out to 30 people, let's say,
Sure.
after every single outreach, that's my trigger. I have to set a next step or make sure there's a next step in my system. How do I make sure
Yep.
that this actually happens consistently so that I do this, out of 30 out of 30 and not 23 out of 30 and lose 7? How do I make sure that I'm really wrapping my net around everybody that I'm reaching out to?
Sure. I mean, it's building a routine and following it and just holding yourself accountable. I think it really helps to have people to let people know that's what you want to do, to let your manager know that, "Hey, I don't want to let any of these things
Mm,
slip through. Can you hold me accountable on all my calls and make sure that there's a next step?" Or set time at the end of your day. Set 30 minutes at the end of your day to review what you did. Go into your CRM and click the activities that you did, and is there a next step? So that's something that my team,
mm.
we typically do. Probably once a month or so, as we look through the CRM together. I mean, we do it every week, but specifically focusing on next steps and making sure that every
Yep.
opportunity has an actionable next step. If it's not in your CRM,
That
you're
way you
going to
don't
forget.
have prospect attrition. Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
something that we found to be really helpful, and obviously, chapter in the book about this as well is allowing your outreach to occur within a preset campaign.
Yeah, yeah,
So there are 9 steps, let's say, and email, voice, or email, then LinkedIn, and then a direct mail piece, and then just mix up your communication channels. But that way,
sure.
the CRM handles the next step for you, assuming that you don't have a great conversation and you rip them out and get a quote and get a customer. That's the ideal.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
we found campaigns to be very, very helpful in helping us set next steps as well. So we've got the trigger, we've
absolutely.
got making this thing repeatable. Now, I want to get even better at this though. I want to make this thing improvable. That's the I in trim. And so, how do I make sure that not only am I hitting 30 out of 30, but that I'm actually generating great conversations with owning the follow up?
Sure. I mean, as with anything, we have to look back at what we've been doing over the past month, 2, 3 months, and review
Mm-hmm.
and find what's working for us. So, back to your campaign, I often put it on my sales reps lately to I try to enable them to make it their own. Right. My 3 sales
Yeah.
reps are vastly different people. One of them was a former pro NFL player. One of them
Mm-hmm.
is a mother of 2 in Arizona. The other is a young girl here in Chicago that used to do stand up comedy and comedy routines and stuff like that. So they're very different, right? And so their approach is
Mm-hmm.
going to be different. And we can have a
Sure.
framework that there are some immovable objects within the steps, but at the same time, Brian's cadence might not work for Perry, right?
Right.
And so giving them the empowerment to find what works for them, and then also setting up quality sales meetings that give your team a chance to share successes and losses. Hey, this is
Mm.
really working for me. This follow-up piece has gotten me a lot of communication. I've had a lot more success with short emails, asking a simple question versus trying to sell them in an email. So things like
Right.
that, I think, is really ways to improve it. When it comes back to like specifically follow up, how can we improve that? Um, again, I think it's just reviewing, setting time to review and make sure that you're actually doing it, and then
Hmm.
partnering that with your team, sharing stuff, tweaking it to make sure that your follow-ups not just consistent but better content. um, Trying different versions of follow-up via LinkedIn. Maybe you followed up twice via email and nobody answered. Find them on LinkedIn.
Right.
Shoot them a text sometimes. Like we're in a unique time that like sales is different than it's ever been. Some people
Oh
love
yeah.
texting and hate email. Some people hate being on the phone. So trying to meet your prospect where they want to be met
Yep,
is
and
another way to try
trying
to improve
everything
that.
until you start to get that great response rate. I love what you just
Yeah.
said. Now, I hope that all the listeners and viewers caught this, is that to survey your team weekly, bi-weekly, whatever it looks like, but to say, where did your highest amount of response come from? Was it a
Yeah.
phone call? Was it an email? Was it a LinkedIn message? And if so, share that with the team, right? Because we're all on the same team, unless we're all trying to poach each other's prospects. If you
Yeah.
have a LinkedIn message that's just going gangbusters to get you a response, please, I would love to have access to that, right? And we can all do
Yeah.
better together.
What's
So
working for
that's
you?
that's
Yeah,
an
exactly.
yeah. What's working?
Yeah.
So we've got the trigger, we've got making it repeatable, we've got making it improvable. Now, this last piece, as a sales leader, really, really important. How do we measure this? How do we make
Yeah.
sure, one, that our salespeople are doing it consistently, and then how do we measure the effectiveness of it, either in better response rates, better callbacks, or better sales?
Sure. I mean, the follow up itself is kind of easy to track, right? Is measurable. Just check your CRM.
Yeah.
It's one of the jobs of a sales leader is to do that. And I think a lot of people um, view it as micromanaging. I think if you're doing it right, it doesn't feel like micromanaging. Um, you're assisting them. You're holding people accountable. You're coaching them. They can improve it. I mean, you're basically going through those first three steps over and over as we measure things, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, I mean, just tracking things in the CRM is probably the easiest way to measure this kind of simple, basic task. But how do we measure the improvements? I think is a unique aspect as well, and that's where we start to see a sales rep that has a lot of success in a certain month, or has they kind of were going at a certain pace, and bam, all of a sudden they're really starting to pick things up. What are they doing? And you dig
Hmm.
deeper into their follow up. You look at the CRM, you look at their notes, you look at their emails, and you start to see, wow, they've really started to, they've closed a deal. They've started to ask for a referral at the end. They never used to do that. They never used to
Mm.
say, "Do you know anybody else?" Or they look at another thing that I like is as a sales rep that you've sold somebody. And in our business, once the sales rep makes the sale, they're not really in contact as much. There's not really account management side of it. We like to check in and things like that. But you know, looking at a sale that went well, setting a follow up in your calendar. Hey, this already sold, but I'm 3 months down the line, 4 months down the line. I'm going to look at how that business is doing. If it's doing really well, I'm then going to ask them if they have friends and friends or family that own
Right.
stores. So there's little things like that. I think while measuring quality performance and while measuring good follow up, and that can really help make a good rep a better rep. Right? Is always going back to the sales cycle, and I think the last step of every sales cycle should be ask for a referral, ask for a lead. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. Seed more
So
prospects. And then
exactly.
to get all of this done also inside of a system that allows you to batch, right? And that's not something that we really dug into a lot, but it needs to be
Yeah.
said that
Yeah.
if you really start to do this at scale, you're gonna have a lot of follow-up tasks. If you're adding 10, 20 new prospects in a week, you're gonna keep
Yeah.
yourself busy with all these follow-up
Yep.
tasks. And that it's going to be essential for your sanity and for your salespeople's sanity to batch your phone calls together during those golden hours, to batch your emails,
Absolutely.
to get all your direct mail done, off hours, right? When no one's answering the phone, but to be able to make that manageable for you, to be able to say, I want to see all my phone calls at one time, all my emails right now. I want to see all my direct mail tasks, whatever that looks like. So
Sure.
really critical, leverage the system, leverage the CRM to do that. This is awesome system, Matt. As we wrap up here, because I want to give people a chance to go out and implement it, how do they find out more
Yeah.
about you, the brand new industry that you're in? How do they get in
Yeah.
touch with your company? Tell us, how do we get into Matt Tolbert's world?
Yeah. Look me up on LinkedIn if you're looking for me specifically for anything. Probably the easiest way to find me. Otherwise, just reach out to DigitalMint. We're at digitalmint.io. That's our website,
Mm-hmm.
and probably the easiest way. There's some forms on there you can reach out, contact us. But yeah, it's a young, fun industry. There's a lot of upside, and we're just excited to be kind of championing this, moral obligation to be a better company, to be a more responsible company, to protect the vendors, to protect their partnerships, and to protect their customers. So, I mean, it's a fun kind of noble quest that we're on, in a way. But I love it. It's fun, and my team's great. So I wake up every day just thrilled to go to work, So
That's amazing, man. And so
yeah.
it's fun. Matt is in. I just thought of your acronym. Your analogy about the Old West. The Old West, full of a lot of interesting characters. DigitalMint.
Yeah.
Y'all are the sheriffs, making sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. This is great, man. Love it. Well, yeah. So please reach out to Matt. He's great on LinkedIn. Very receptive. Make sure you're connecting up. And then, of course, for Bulletproof Selling here, for all the listeners, all the viewers, make sure you're following us on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube for these live streams. And of course, check out that podcast that drops every Monday on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere podcasts can be found. For more sales systems to help you replace hope with certainty, to give you better pipeline performance, make sure you're checking out the resources that we are posting fresh every single week over at bulletproof-selling.com. Sean Rhodes here with Matt Tolbert. Matt, it's been a pleasure serving the sales community with you. Let's go out there and make selling bulletproof.
Thanks, Sean.